Another week of high school football is in the books. A few more left to go before we hit the playoffs. Hey again, everybody. This is the Under the Lights High School Football Podcast. I'm Kyle Parmley, joined by Gary Lloyd. Gary, we learned a lot last week, but there's still a lot left to be learned.
Yeah, definitely learned a lot in Class 7A Region 3, and a lot left to learn this week and next week in across Class 6A. So it's gonna be a fun time this week.
Let's go ahead and get the bad news out of the way. The Braves disappointed us all and broke our hearts. So for us, we've had a few days to mourn the loss. But for everyone else, that means we actually just get to worry about high school football for the next few weeks. We won't be that distracted. So I guess there's a silver lining in everything, right?
Yeah, I guess I'm going to be a big Texas Rangers fan at this point. They've been fun to watch at least, and definitely haven't disappointed like some teams that wear a shade of blue and red. So we'll pull for them.
Well, speaking of blue and red, I got to see a few of those shades last Friday night at Vestavia Hills. Hewitt-Trussville, by far their most impressive performance of the year. They take down Vestavia 55-27. I tried to tell everybody before the game this is going to be a track meet. It lived up to it. Both offenses were up and down the field. Honestly, the biggest difference in this game were the turnovers. Vestavia Hills turned the ball over 5 times. Hewitt-Trussville's offense, though, over 600 total yards. Quarterback Peyton Floyd accounted for 6 touchdowns and just a dominant performance for the Huskies on that side of the ball. Huge win for them. Unless something crazy happens the next couple of weeks, Hewitt will be the number 2 seed in Class 7A Region 3. But man, it was a sight to behold on Friday night there at Thompson-Reynolds Stadium.
I didn't see that coming. Like, I saw the track meet. I saw the potential for Hewitt-Trussville to win. Personally, I thought Vestavia maybe had the edge, but I didn't see doubling them up on the road, forcing that many turnovers. And, it seems, you tell me, but offensive lineman Cade Martin was back for Hewitt-Trussville Friday, who's, he's had some injury stuff throughout his career, but is one of the best offensive linemen that Hewitt's had in a number of years. And he comes back, and Hewitt averages 9 yards a carry Friday night. So there had to be something to that physicality Friday night too. They just absolutely took it to Vestavia.
Yeah, you mentioned that. Cade Martin was back. That was a big deal. Head coach Josh Floyd said as much after the game. He made sure to credit the entire O-line. But you're right. 451 rushing yards for the Huskies. That is an incredible number. Peyton Floyd had 257 of that. Kennedy Mitchell had 97 yards and scored twice. And Jackson Melton even had 83 rushing yards. So just a completely dominant physical performance for the Huskies. And Gary, I think we talked last week about over-under for the quarterback rushes in this game. And I think we put the number somewhere around 54. It went a little bit under, but Peyton Floyd carried the ball 22 times. John Paul Head carried it 26 times. So we knew both quarterbacks would be a factor in that game, and they certainly were. But this was one of those games that, it decides the 2 seed more or less, but it's not the end of the road for Vestavia. It's kind of funny. So talking to head coach Robert Evans after the game, he put it this way. He's like, Hewitt-Trussville got embarrassed by Thompson the week before. They came together during the week, and we're like, we're not letting that happen again. We're going to come out and put a performance on the field that we're proud of. And now Vestavia's got the opportunity to do the same thing. They kind of got embarrassed by Hewitt, and now they will have the opportunity to kind of do a lot of self-evaluation, reflection, and kind of turn that around in the upcoming weeks. So very impressive performance for the Huskies.
Yeah, it definitely was. They put everything together, and doing it a week after what happened against Thompson. It couldn't have come at a better time, and that might be the best performance from Hewitt-Trussville, road game or otherwise, that we've seen in, 5 years. 55 points on the road in a game that meant what that game meant, the build up to it, just an incredible performance, and likely locks up that 2 seed more than likely, and that's a big deal for Hewitt-Trussville.
It is a big deal. Gary, let's talk about the game you were at. Parker and Mountain Brook on the opposite end of that game. This was a defensive struggle. Parker scores late. They come out on top 13-10. Gary, what'd you see out there from the Spartans?
I saw a Mountain Brook team that did not look like a Mountain Brook team. Head coach Chris Yeager said as much after the game. I mean, we probably talked for 4 or 5 minutes. You know how those post games go pretty quick. And he probably mentioned it 4 or 5 times in those 4 or 5 minutes. Just this was not Mountain Brook football. You know, he obviously gives a lot of credit to Parker. They've got a lot of really good players on both sides of the ball, but just too many self-inflicted wounds. I mean, I think I had Mountain Brook called for offsides, lining up offsides 6 different times in the game. Two of those were on Parker's touchdown drive in the first half. There was a fourth down. Parker's going to punt. It was like 4th and 3. Line up offsides, get a first down. And then it was later in the drive. They're in the red zone in Mountain Brook territory. 3rd down. You know, you're trying to get the defense off the field, force a field goal attempt or a long 4th down, whatever, and offsides again gives them a first down. They score, tie the game going into half. So just too many errors like that offensively. You know, they throw 2 interceptions, and both those interceptions are thrown into the red zone. So they were on productive drives that obviously you came away with nothing. Cole Gamble, you know, he had a big night, 175, 176 yards, but he lost a fumble early in the second half. So just a lot of un-Mountain Brook like play in the fundamentals. You know, 3 turnovers, a lot of penalties, but given all of that, you're still right there against a Parker team that is one of the best teams in 6A as well. So, you know, you clean that up, and you're probably looking pretty good for a win if you do those fundamentals right. But you can't help but feel like you let one get away there at home. The game meant the region most likely, and now Parker locks up the region, and now Mountain Brook has to play Mortimer Jordan at home this week for that coveted 2 seed. So just a tough night for Mountain Brook. Parker had a lot to do with it. They've got some just absolute dudes. My gosh, Jeremiah Beeman I think he's going to Alabama. Jordan Crawford along that defensive line as well, just committed to Auburn. He runs the ball as well at times. But the big guy for them was Naeem Offord. I mean, he's a 5-star cornerback prospect, plays both ways. He scored both touchdowns, ran for 80-something yards. He's a tough guy to stop on both sides of the ball. And I mean, they played with their backup quarterback, and and Cam Jennings, he managed the game well, made some big runs when Parker needed them. Didn't really have to do much through the air. Didn't do much through the air, but just a really solid road win for Parker, and just a tough loss for Mountain Brook.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about that Mountain Brook Mortimer Jordan game that you mentioned a little later on. But yeah, tough loss. But it always seems like when Mountain Brook loses a game like that, Chris Yeager and his staff are some of the best at using those as learning opportunities and making things happen on the back end of that, as opposed to repeating all those mistakes. So
Sure.
we'll see how they rebound. Another game we want to touch on: Hoover beats Tuscaloosa County 37-10. This was a game Hoover had to have in terms of the playoffs. But this was like, I kept checking the score in the first half and was just like, man, what is going on? But it looks like they got the pick six on the last play of the first half. J.J. Moultrie intercepts a pass and goes the distance. And that gave Hoover the lead and kind of led to a big second half. This is one of those games that, like, Hoover, they pulled out all the stops, especially in the second half. One of their touchdowns came on like a I don't even know if you call it a trick play. Like they kind of looked up at the sidelines and acted as if there was a delay, and then snapped the ball and boom, touchdown on a long pass. And then there was Bradley Shaw, who took a punt return or a fake punt to the house. So Hoover made sure that they were going to win this football game, and they did. And that pretty much gives them the 4 seed. Some craziness would have to happen over the next couple of weeks that, quite frankly, is not going to happen. But it is good to see this Bucks team. They've stayed together. They've kept the course. It hasn't been easy, but they're going to be in the playoffs.
Yeah, you imagine if that craziness doesn't happen, like you're certain that the craziness won't happen. But you imagine being that one seed up north, and it's like, hey, you've got a home playoff game, but it's Hoover coming to see you. That's crazy.
Yeah, it is.
But yeah, JJ Moultrie, holy cow! Like, I mean, for all of Hoover's struggles we've talked about this year at times, that dude brings it every week in some sort of way.
He's really good.
He's been an he's been an unbelievable catalyst for them, and they needed it Friday at Tuscaloosa County, and it seemed like it really spurred the Bucks on in that second half to get a much needed win. And like you said, they scored in multiple ways, but if quarterback Noah Shoebox, taking care of the ball and playing pretty well, and Jonah Winston is just a playmaker. And it seemed like they gave Fred Dunson, the receiver, seemed like he got some carries in this game and had a big game running the ball. I mean, if they're starting to find some guys this late in the year, slotting them where they need to slot them and are having some success, I mean, look out.
Sure. Yeah, well, Fred Dunson, he's gotten some carries sets at points throughout the year as they've tried to figure out their running back rotation. But there's no doubt that's a guy. Fred Dunson, Jonah Winston, Jordan Woolen, those are all guys that it's hard to, when they're not traditional tailbacks, you can't just hand them the ball necessarily. But those are three guys Hoover's been trying to find ways to get the ball in their hands, and they did that successfully on Friday night. So big win for the Bucks. Let's run through a few more scores to wrap up the week. Spain Park pulls away in the second half to beat Chelsea 38-21. Thompson rolls past Oak Mountain 67-7 in Region 3 games. Down in 6A, Briarwood shuts out Calera 38-0. Homewood beats Chilton County 34-13. That region is really interesting. And Ramsey beats John Carroll 28-0. The Cavs are now 5-2. And I've got to say, I mean, the Pleasant Grove and Ramsey losses, they've kept them more competitive than I thought they would. So I don't think they are really hanging their heads after those last two games.
No, I don't think so either. I mean, you hate to get shut out at home, but I mean, Ramsey's one of the best teams around. So they'll have an
Ramsey
important
scored
one
like
this week.
40-something points in the first half last week against Winona, and they scored 28 in a game against John Carroll. And you can't compare games and all that, but Winona is one of those common opponents that like John Carroll is going to have to beat coming up. So
yeah, that could be a really, really big one in next week.
No doubt. So that's week. We're calling it week 8 in the books. Week 9 is here. It is crazy to say that. We've got 2 more weeks of region play, and then the last week of the regular season. A lot of teams are off. A lot of teams play a non-region game that doesn't matter. Either way, 2 more weeks of big-time games before we get to the postseason. The game that I'm going to be at on Friday night, Mountain Brook hosting Mortimer Jordan. The winner of this game is going to get the 2 seed. That guarantees you a first-round home playoff game. We can get it in the next week or 2. We can get into all the potential matchups and how that shakes out. But you definitely want a first-round home playoff game if you can get it. So the winner of this game will clinch that. This has been a renaissance year for Mortimer Jordan. They go from perennial state title contender for like 5 or 6 years, and then over the next 3 years, they win a total of 5 games. It just was a horrible fall off. And then all of a sudden this year, they're back. I don't know what's been going on over there, but they are rolling. But Gary, you tell me. I mean, it seems like the Mountain Brook defense played well enough. If they replicate last week's performance this week, they played well enough to win on defense. They just got to eliminate some of these silly penalties and turnovers. And if they can do that, they feel pretty good about what they've got.
Yeah, but it's going to be such a different kind of defensive game. Like
Sure.
Parker ran the ball a lot. Mountain Brook obviously runs the ball a lot too. Mortimer Jordan flings the thing. I mean, quarterback Garrett Ames out there. I mean, he's a pitcher in baseball. He's a pretty good quarterback. They'll throw the ball now. I mean, they're scoring 39 points a game. So it's going to be a different kind of look for the Mountain Brook defense. But I think we're going to see the tried and true for Mountain Brook. I think we're going to see short type passes, probably 25 plus carries for Cole Gamble, and try to keep that Mortimer Jordan offense over on the sideline, and really get back to those fundamentals that Coach Yeager talked to me about post game after the Parker loss. Is play a clean game, don't see a lot of yellow handkerchiefs thrown on the field, and just try to lock this thing up.
Yeah, I think Spartan Stadium will be juiced up for this one. This is a big one. So if Mountain Brook can win this game, that takes a lot of the pressure off for that Gardendale game the week after that. So I'm looking forward to being out there. I think it's going to be a fun night, and like you said, kind of a contrasting game. Mountain Brook is probably going to have a few more possessions, you'd like to think, in this one. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. I'm anxious to see Mortimer Jordan with my own eyes and kind of get a gauge on what they've been doing so well this year.
For sure.
All right. Briarwood is hosting Benjamin Russell. If you look at Class 6A Region 3, there's 3 teams at 3-1, and then there's Pelham at 1-3. So Briarwood and Benjamin Russell are both 3-1. Homewood and Pelham also play each other this week, and there's still so much to be decided, 2 through 5 there. This is one of those games, like, I was talking to some of the Homewood coaches last week because Homewood drilled Benjamin Russell several weeks ago. And it was eye-popping because Benjamin Russell has put on tape that they're a good team, and Homewood just completely dismantled them. So the thing for Briarwood this week, how are they going to handle that skill at the offensive skills positions for Benjamin Russell? You got guys like Gabe Benton at quarterback, Malcolm Simmons at receiver. Like, Benjamin Russell has got a handful of guys that will be the best athletes on the field at all times. And that's going to be a challenge for Briarwood. I think Briarwood probably has maybe a little bit broader array of guys that are good at what they do in their specific roles, but Benjamin Russell's got the top end talent. So this is going to be a very interesting game, and I have no idea how this one will shake out.
That's exactly how I feel about this one. And I think that has more to do with Benjamin Russell than it does Briarwood. I just that Homewood loss is still just kind of confounding to me. The way, not that they lost, but the way they lost at home by 3 touchdowns, and I have no idea. I think that's what's so much fun about these late season important games out of Region 3. I mean, we've got Benjamin Russell at Briarwood this week. Next week we'll have Homewood at Briarwood, which could feel somewhat the same way. I don't know what's going to happen. But you're right. Gabe Benton and Malcolm Simmons, I mean, these are big play guys, big hitter guys. Briarwood do you come in healthy in the backfield? They've had some key injuries in the last few weeks out of the backfield. So if those guys aren't back, how many carries does a guy like Cooper Higgins get? Can that defensive line for Briarwood that we've talked about a lot recently, can they force Gabe Benton into some tough throws and let that secondary that's been pretty good, do some work at home. So it can't be understated, I think, how big the schedule has shaped out for Briarwood this year, just given what the standings are currently. And you get those other 3-1 teams, you get Benjamin Russell at home, you get Homewood at home, with the potential to get that 2 seed out of Region 3 on the line. So I think, like you mentioned about Mountain Brook, I think it will be a juiced up atmosphere as well. I think there will be a lot of, it feels like a big tension kind of game. We've seen a lot of those with Briarwood over the last few years with, close games and, last minute heroics and stuff like that. And I could see this one going much the same way.
Yeah, I think this game rests a lot in the hands of Briarwood's defense, putting together a pretty solid performance. You're going to have big plays, but you got to limit them as best you can. So we will see there. This is, you mentioned the schedule. Briarwood, if they want the 2 seed, they need to win this game, because if you get into tiebreaker scenarios, they usually start falling down to, the stuff like the non-region opponents. And the fact that Briarwood challenged themselves with Clay-Chalkville
Yeah.
and Spain Park at the start of the year, that puts them on uh, the disadvantageous side of that. So um, we'll see how this one shakes out. But Gary, let's talk about the game you're going to be at. Spain Park at Hewitt-Trussville. I don't claim to have done all of the digging as to what kind of wild scenario has to happen for Spain Park to make the playoffs, other than there is still a shot that Spain Park gets in the playoffs if a few things unfold a certain way. And one of those would be the Jags upsetting Hewitt-Trussville, which is going to be quite a tall task. The Huskies' best performance of the year last week. They come in riding high. They'll be at home. Spain Park, that game against Chelsea last week was close for a half, and then Spain Park really kind of put it on in the second half. So is that kind of how you see this? The Jags just kind of hanging on for dear life in playoffs?
Yeah, I mean, you can get into the other than the X's and O's, like you can kind of get into the health and the emotion parts of things too. Like we've seen Spain Park kind of bring itself back in recent weeks now that they're healthy and play well. And, that running game work really well and make explosive plays and that kind of thing. And you could see Hewitt coming back home off of just the most emotional win, riding super high. You don't want to lay an egg here at home. Um, I don't know how much I buy into either of those. I think on paper Hewitt-Trussville should win the game. But there, I say don't ride too much on that emotion, but Hewitt feels like it's likely locked up the 2 seed. Spain Park, I'm not saying this is the scenario, but this is what I see. I think Spain Park has to win at Hewitt and then next week at Oak Mountain to get to 4-3 in the region. And they would need Hoover to lose at Chelsea and to Thompson. And then Hoover would, I think, fall to 3-4 in the region. I think that's the scenario to get them in.
Okay.
That's tough. So
yeah, you're right. And that is tough.
So I mean, you literally, if you're Spain Park, you have to win your last 2, and Hoover has to lose their last 2. Now Hoover does have Thompson, which could be that's probably an L, but they've got to go to Chelsea and lose there while you beat Hewitt at Hewitt. That's a tall task. I don't necessarily see this game as a Hewitt runaway. I think Spain Park's going to fight, scratch, and claw, and especially being back to more of full health, and they've got a running game that works pretty well. I think Hewitt-Trussville's going to not need to sleepwalk into this one if they want to not be in a game fighting for a win in the fourth quarter. But I just think it's maybe too tall of a task for Spain Park to go on the road and beat this Hewitt-Trussville team right now. They're playing well in all phases, coming off a win like that. I think Hewitt's got just a little bit too much in the tank for Spain Park, but I'm expecting a battle for sure.
Yeah, if you want some hope for Spain Park, last week against Chelsea, the Shanks brothers, Dakari and Derek, they combined for over 200 yards on the ground, and that was kind of the key to victory for Spain Park. So they will, if they can replicate that, and this Hewitt-Trussville defense had played so well, but Thompson really was able to do whatever they wanted to against them, and Vestavia still had moments of being able to run the ball. So if you're looking for any kind of Spain Park silver lining, that's that. They're going to have to run the ball really well. But like you, I think Hewitt is just the better team in this game. And I mean, unless they just don't handle the success from last week well, I think the Huskies are the better team here. Let's really dive into one more game. Homewood hosting Pelham. We touched on this a little bit. If Homewood is able to win this game, that would clinch them in the playoffs. I think that would kind of decide a lot of things in that region with, some stuff, seeding still left up in the air. But this is kind of a rivalry game. These two teams have played a lot over the years. They've had some really good battles over the years. But Homewood is, they're riding high. They lost their first 3, and they haven't lost since. So it's been cool to watch this team. Pelham, they're kind of backs up against the wall. They lost to Benjamin Russell last week, and they know it's kind of now or never territory for them. So they will come out ready to play. This will be a fun one at Waldrop Stadium on Friday night.
Yeah, and if you're Homewood, I mean, a quick start in this one would go a long way.
Yeah.
I mean, like you said, the game means a lot for both teams. It is a rivalry type game, but for standings and playoff picture and all that, you want to put Pelham down as quickly as you can. So, you want to try to force Clayton Maines, the Pelham quarterback, into some tough decisions. Maybe force an early turnover kind of thing. Set the tone. Lean on quarterback Will Myers. Lean on Evan Osmer, and try to get out of there with as comfortable a win as you can. I'm not saying Homewood should easily win this game because I don't think that's the case, but you want as stress free of a game as possible here going into next week at Briarwood.
I would agree with that. The other games we've got on tap this week: Hoover traveling to Chelsea. We mentioned that a little bit. The Bucks can wrap up a playoff spot with this win officially. And that, just a fun side note: Hoover head coach Wade Waldrop got his head coaching career started at Chelsea. He was there from 2006 to 12, I believe. So a homecoming of sorts for Waldrop. Oak Mountain going to Vestavia Hills. I think the Rebels will get back on track and win big in this one. John Carroll making a trip to Jasper. If John Carroll wins this game, they lock up a playoff berth for the first time since 2009. Hey, Gary, one thing to keep an eye on with John Carroll, since I know you love these types of numbers, if John Carroll finishes off the regular season solidly over the next 3 weeks, they could finish with a positive point differential for the first time in 23 years, something like that. Even the last couple of teams that made the playoffs, they still have a negative point differential overall. But, a blowout loss in the playoffs against a state championship team will do that to you sometimes.
Yeah. Well, and real quick on John Carroll, isn't it crazy that, we were, or at least I know I was, kind of dismissive of this game at Jasper, with Jasper being winless. Well, they had scored 80 points all season. Yep. And then last week they hang a 50 spot on Carver. So now you're going to Jasper like, what did they find?
Right.
Where did they find 50 points? And what do we have to do to make sure we come in locked in? So what maybe appeared as a layup is now a contested layup a little bit. So we'll see.
That's exactly what I thought when I was writing up our weekly preview this week. Just like, hang on a second. This throws a little bit of a wrench into things. This is not as straightforward as it looked like it might be.
Yeah.
And then finally, I hate that we won't have anyone there, but Clay-Chalkville going to Oxford. I think that's going to be a fantastic game. The Cougars are on fire right now. Oxford is a team that's only lost once. This is easily the best team Sam Adams has had in his 3 years, it appears. And Oxford gave Clay-Chalkville all it wanted last year. So Oxford gets them at home. If you haven't seen Oxford's, they finally have kind of unveiled the new indoor facility that took a few years longer to build than they really wanted it to, but looks like it's worth the wait. That thing is sweet.
Yeah. I mean, what, Region 6 title on the line there, right? I mean, yep. Both undefeated in region. I mean, hey, a week or so ago, you were saying Clay, no problem over at Oxford. Now it sounds like you're changing your tune maybe a little bit.
I am changing my tune a little bit. So the fun thing about this game is if Clay-Chalkville wins, they clinch the region. If Oxford wins, it's not over yet because Oxford plays Centerpoint next week, and Centerpoint only has one loss in region at this point, so technically one loss. But we'll see. I think Clay-Chalkville still wins the game. I just think it's going to be a good one. But
yeah.
All right. Well, Gary, there's no shortage of things going on. We've talked all the high school football, high school volleyball stuff's coming up, postseason play. High school basketball is right around the corner. I've been working on that a lot.
So you're not busy at all?
Do what?
You're not busy at all, are you?
Nah, the calendar's really easy to keep up with right now. So
Well, you should make that more believable for these podcasts, at least for the video viewers, and that board behind you. You should write down like all your to-do lists back there or something, because right now it's just empty and it looks like you're just goofing off with me.
Yeah, it looks like I'm just hanging out all day. But yeah, so I think that's it. Big week of football coming on Friday night. We will have all the action covered. Stay tuned on all of the Starnes Media websites, all 6 of our papers. You can follow Gary on Twitter at Gary A. Lloyd. I'm on Twitter at Kyle Parmley. We look forward to seeing you out at the stadium. If you see one of us, come say hello. Otherwise, be following along because we'll be trying to keep track of all of it as well. So thanks, Gary, and we'll see you all next time.